Hi guys, Miss Kathy back. I'm about to read our Pilgrim stories again. And you're gonna need to turn to the same page that we've been working on where the three pictures are. And we're going to write a little sentence about this one today. And so you can find this in your blue notebook. You're going to need a pencil and some colored pencils. I forgot to tell you that on Monday and Tuesday. So you need your colored pencils to fill these in, color these in, and a regular pencil. So pause the video to go get those things, and then I'll begin reading. Okay, this chapter is called A Way to Holland. A Way to Holland. And I'm going to try just reading it to you this time, and you not having to look at the pictures. You can just listen. You don't even have to look at anything. You can be coloring or you can be drawing a picture. But if the title of the chapter is A Way to Holland, what do you think? Are they finally going to get on the boat? Where did we leave them last time? Do you remember? Last time we definitely called them pilgrims. Okay. A Way to Holland. When spring came, the Pilgrims again planned to leave England. Elder Brewster knew a Hollander who had a ship of his own, so he arranged with this Dutch captain to carry the Pilgrims to Holland. They now went to a lonely place on the shore, far from any town where they thought they would be safer. All day they waited for the ship, fearing every minute to be taken away by the king's men again. At last, late in the afternoon, a sail appeared. When the ship had come as close to the shore as it could, it anchored and waited for the people to row out to it. The Pilgrims had a large boat of their own in which they had brought their goods down the river to the sea. It was agreed that most of the men should go first and load the heavy boxes upon the ship. Then two come back for those left on the shore. The boat had started toward the shore for its second load when the ship's captain saw something which filled his heart with terror. A long black line was curving down the hill. He raised his glass. What was his glass? His spyglass, his eyeglass, his basically binoculars, but it was a monocular because it was only one, like Robinson Crusoe had and Columbus had. They had a monocular. A long black line was curving down the hill. He raised his glass to his eye. Soldiers and horsemen! Look, men! He cried. One glance told them that the soldiers were marching straight toward the place where the Pilgrims were waiting. Oh no! Even though the sails were ready, the ship was ready and they were loading it, the soldiers were coming. Oh no. Quick! Lower another boat, cried William Bradford. We can now row to the shore and get the others before the soldiers reach them. But already the sailors were lifting the anchor. The wind filled the sails and the ship began to move. Let us off, cried the men. If you are afraid to wait for the others, at least let us go back to our families. The soldiers will capture my ship, answered the captain. My ship is all I have in the world. They shall not have it. They do not want your ship, and they could not reach it if they did. They only want us. Let us go. But the frightened man would not listen to them. He had heard of many captains who had lost their ships through helping people escape from England, and he would not stop a moment. The ship sailed out into the sea, and the darkness soon hid the shore from the sight of those on deck. That night, a great storm arose. The little ship was tossed about like a chip upon the waves. Not sure what that phrase means, because it's the word chip, like a chip you eat, but it should have said ship upon the waves, but interesting. Maybe if we try floating a chip, like a corn chip, we'll see what happens. I think it'll just kind of disintegrate and melt. Okay. Not a star was to be seen in the black sky to guide the pilot. No friendly lighthouse set out its rays to show them where to go. For more than a week, the ship was driven by the wind, they knew not where. When the storm was over, the sailors found they had been going away from Holland instead of toward it. They were hundreds of miles off their course. If we have a good wind and fair weather, we shall reach port in a few days, said the captain, when the ship had been turned and headed for Holland. But they did not have good wind and fair weather. That very night, a heavy fog settled down upon the sea. They could not see 10 feet from the ship. 2 days later, another storm came up, much worse than the first one. Surely the little vessel could not brave the storm. One of the masts was gone, and the water poured in through a hole in the side of the boat. Remember what a mast was. We've talked about this several times. Remember, it's one of the long, tall, huge pieces of wood that held the sails up. So the ship they were on had several masts, just like Columbus's ships. And Leif Erikson, his ships only had one mast. So that was a little bit different. Anyway, okay, let's keep going. So what did it say? The mast, oh, and I lost my place. No, I didn't. The mast was broken. Surely the little vessel could not brave the storm. One of the masts was gone. It wasn't just broken, it was completely gone, and the water poured in a hole through the side of the boat. Worst of all, the food and fresh water were almost gone. No one on board expected that the ship would reach land again. The captain thought God was punishing him for his cowardly act in leaving the helpless women to the soldiers. The sailors all joined the Pilgrims in their prayers for help and pardon. At last the clouds broke and bits of the icy sky peeped forth. Soon the wind went down and the waves, too, slowly grew quiet. With the sun to guide them by day and the stars by night, the ship finally reached the city of Amsterdam in Holland. But what had become of the Pilgrims who had been left on the shore? What happened to them? We got to find out. When the soldiers came up, they found only a group of very miserable women, frightened children, and 2 or 3 men. They saw the ship sailing out to sea and knew they were too late to take those they most wanted. What should they do? It seemed a shame to imprison women and children who had done no one any harm, but they had their orders. There was nothing to do but obey. So the Pilgrims were placed in their boat and rowed to the city. It was a long, tiring ride, and before they reached the landing, the night had grown quite dark and most of the children were fast asleep. So this is like a rewind. We're now finding out what happened to the women and children that were left on the shore, and a couple of men. When the lights of the city were seen, one big soldier thought of his wife and babies there, safe at home. Then he looked at his prisoners, a few tearful women and some tired, sleeping children. He did not feel very brave. Risking his life in battle was more pleasant than this. He didn't want to imprison those women and children. He thought of his own family. The other soldiers seemed to feel as much as he did, for when the shore was reached, they gently helped their prisoners from the boat. Then each took a sleeping child in his arms, and soon all disappeared down the dark street. The Pilgrims were not kept in prison a long time. A few days later, they returned to the homes of their friends. The judges were tired of them. They were tired of them coming back and getting put in prison and listening to their story. The king, too, was tired of the trouble. Since their husbands have gone, let the women go to them. I am tired of hearing about it, said King James. But few of them had money to go to them, and it was many months before the men in Holland could earn enough money to send for their families. Wow. what if your dad had gotten on a ship and had to go far away, and he was having to work there in order to earn enough money to send money back to you to bring you and your mom and maybe your brothers and sisters to be with them. Wow. I'm going to keep reading. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Okay. As the people were getting on another ship in the spring to go to Holland, what did the captain notice? What did he notice? What was coming, winding down the hill, and it looked like something, a long black ribbon. That's right. It was soldiers and horsemen. They were coming to arrest them. Why did the captain want to hurry away and not get the women and children who were left on the shore? Why did he do that? That wasn't very nice. Well, he was afraid. He let fear control him. He said, you remember what he said? My ship is the only thing I have in the whole world, and I don't want to lose it. He'd heard stories of other captains losing their ships to the English soldiers because they were trying to help people escape England at the time. So he was afraid. Okay, let me ask you another thing. What did King James finally let the women do? That's right. He finally said, let them go to their husbands. Let them go to Holland and go to their families. He wasn't going to put them in prison anymore. All right, here we are in Holland. Here's our next picture. And this is a big picture of our little one out of our, that we're going to color. Like I said, I'm sorry I didn't blow these pictures or copy these pictures for you to trace and color because they're so much better. I just apologize. Anyway, it says, from the high road, the Pilgrims could see beautiful churches, large shops, and narrow streets. Maybe you can see those words underneath yours. All right, the title of this chapter is In Holland. At last the ship bearing the rest of the Pilgrims reached Holland. The captain had told them that soon they would land in Amsterdam. So now we're going back to the story about the ship and the captain and the men on the ship. We kind of did a flashback and found out what happened to the women and children. Now we're flashing forward, finding out what happened to the men after the 2 storms. The captain had told them they would soon reach land in Amsterdam. All were upon the deck, eager to catch the first glimpse of the city, which was to be their home. If it were not for this fog, I think you could see the city now, said one of the sailors to the group of children at the bow. That's the front of the ship. They peered into the mist, but not a sign of the city could they see. Above, a ball of soft yellow light showed where the sun was trying to shine through the haze. Sometimes a great shadowy sail floated toward them out of the mist. Many little fishing boats passed quite close to the ship. In one of these, a little boy sat on the big brown net piled up in one end of the boat. He looked up and saw the children on the ship high above him, and he waved his hand. Of course, the children waved to him too. When their ship had passed the little fishing boat, they ran to the other end of the deck and waved again. So they waved when they first saw him, and then they ran to the back of their big, long ship and waved when it was passing because their ship was big enough to run from the bow to the back of the boat. All right. Then the children turned again to watch for the city. Oh, cried Jonathan Brewster. Oh, echoed a dozen others. What was it they saw? Out of the mist rose high, shining towers, golden church spires. Those are the steeples of the churches, and tall pointed roofs with wonderful chimneys. For a minute, all were speechless. The city looked as though it were floating Right on the water, said Mary Chilton when she had found her voice. It is almost, answered her mother. I am told there is water all around it and through it. In many of the streets are waterways where boats pass to and fro between the houses. So it's like Venice, another city in Italy, Amsterdam. Sometimes to get from one place to another, you have to get in a boat and sail and ride a boat to get to your neighbor's house or get to a different part of the city. How beautiful it is, said Mistress Brewster, who had just come up onto the dark deck with baby Love in her arms. I am sure we shall be very happy here. See, the sun is coming out and the mist is almost gone. It took the ship a long time to make its way past the other boats in the harbor and up to the landing. On the shore stood a number of Englishmen who had waited hours for this ship to arrive. Some had lived in Holland several years, but most of them were pilgrims who had been carried away from England in the Dutch ship. Mary Chilton's eyes moved quickly from one to another of the men on the shore. She was looking for a beloved face. There he is, there, she cried. Mother, mother, there is father. He does not see us. Wave your handkerchief. The Brewster children had soon picked out their young friend, William Bradford, and were waving and calling to him. Though the deep shouts of the sailors drowned their voices, nearly everyone had seen some dear friend in the group on the shore. Would the ship never make the landing? How very slow the sailors were. Most of the men had prepared little homes for their families. They had rented small houses near together that they might not be lonely in the strange city. I've taken a cottage for you near Master Robinson's, said Bradford to Elder Brewster when greetings were over. It is not such a fine large house as your home in Scrooby, but it is comfortable. You are very kind, answered the older man. We do not need a large house. If it will shelter you and us, it is large enough. Yes, said Mistress Brewster, we want you to make your house your... We want you to make our house your home until you have one of your own. Bradford thanked his friends, then, taking little fear in his strong arms, he led the way. Before them was what looked to be a long hill, very flat on top. There were stairs on the side, and when these had been climbed, the pilgrims found themselves on a wide, smooth road. They were as high as the treetops and could look down upon the shining red roofs of the houses. On many of the chimneys were great nests of sticks and straw. In some of them, the pilgrims saw young storks with their hungry mouths open wide for the frogs or little fishes their mother brought them, the mother birds, the mother storks. Isn't that amazing that this city had different levels? So one level was here, and they'd gone up a bunch of stairs to another level, and now they were walking on a high road and looking down over the roofs of the houses that were at the lower level. On one chimney, the mother bird sat on the nest, and the father stood on one leg beside her, guarding his home. He must have known there was no danger, for he seemed to be fast asleep. From this high road, the pilgrims looked over the cottages into the pretty gardens behind them. They could see beautiful churches, large shops, and narrow streets. In every direction, they saw great windmills with 4 long arms stretched out to catch the breeze. They were taller than the highest houses, and one might fancy them to be giant watchmen guarding the city. Beyond the town were a river and a large lake. And in the city itself were scores of little streams running in every direction. How strange it looked to see hundreds of masts and sails scattered about among the trees and houses. On the other side of the road was the sea with the shining sails of many ships. How broad and smooth the water looked. Is this a hill, or did the people build this high street? Asked one of the boys. This is a dike, answered Bradford. Holland is very low country. In many places it is lower than the sea. So the people have built these strong walls of earth and stone to keep the water from overflowing into the land. When the hard storms come, they will not push the dike over? Asked Patience. No, they cannot do that because the wall is so much wider at the bottom than at the top. I'm gonna hold my hands up like this. So they're basically angled at the bottom out and angled at the top, and then it's flat on the top and makes like a road. So those are the dikes in Holland. They seem to try to get through the wall. Let's see. No, they cannot do that because the wall is so much wider at the bottom than at the top, but the waves often dash high against the dike. The waves seem to try to get through the wall. The wind helps them, but the dike is too strong. Here's a picture of the windmills. See the windmill? Right there with the long arms? And the wind would catch the windmill and turn it, and it would help pump the water out of the city if water got in, and pump it back into the sea. Also, it would help pump their irrigation fields. It's almost like, have you seen, we call them windmills too, but they're out in the country. In Texas, you especially see them, but they look different than these. Yet sometimes the water does make its way through the wall. At first, only a tiny stream of water is seen trickling down the side of the dike. If this leak were not mended at once, the stream would soon grow larger and larger until nothing could stop it. The land would be flooded and many people lost. Every day and night, watchmen go up and down looking for a leak in the wall. When they find one, they ring a large bell, and all who hear it run to the dike and help stop the leak. They know there is not a moment to be lost if they would save their homes. Their swift fingers weave mats of straw, which they crowd into the hole. Then with earth and stone, the wall is made as strong as before. Even the little children are taught to watch for a leak in the dike. Then he told them how a whole city was once saved by one brave little Hollander who held back the water by filling a tiny leak with his small hand. He stuck it in there. All right. We may answer the questions a little later, but let's write our sentence. And the sentence we're going to write today is, the Pilgrims seek refuge in Holland. So I'm going to write that right down here on the bottom. Right down here. The Pilgrims seek refuge in Holland. So I'm going to write it. I'm going to take my video and flip it so you can see me writing. All right. Let's take a look. I know this was a long one. I tried to talk to you this time instead of just showing you the book. We'll see if that was better. So it's the beginning of a sentence, the T-H-E, so it's got to have a capital letter, the Pilgrims, and it's their proper name, so it's a proper noun. We're going to capitalize that. P-I-L-G-R-I-M-S with a capital P, the Pilgrims. I'll wait for a minute for you to finish that. Seek, S-E-E-K, seek, refuge, R-E-F-U-G-E, refuge. That means safety. They seek for safety. And I don't think I'm going to have enough room. I'm going to write in, and then I'm going to write Holland right below. H-O, capital H because it's the name of a country. So it's its proper noun. It's a proper name. H-O-L-L-A-N-D. I'm going to put a period. If you have to, you can just pause this and copy it. All right, you guys. Whoops. I hope that you get that written, and we've finished that page now. And I'll see you soon. Bye.